When it comes to overcoming church abuse, here are 5 steps to meaningful change and healing. Step 1, unravel toxic theology or religious beliefs. Step 2, go no contact with high control religion. Step 3, don't replace mental health care with church counseling. Step 4, befriend being disliked and misunderstood. And step 5, carve your own path. You don't need anyone's approval. Those of us who grew up going to church, we were taught that theology was the absolute truth of God. But that's not quite accurate. Theology is religious theory that more often than not was invented by the elite for the elite. For example, sin nature, the theology of sin nature. Many of us were told that we had to forgive our abusers because we're all born with a sin nature. And that's why they did what they did. So if you ever stole a pack of gum, if you ever spoke back to your parents, if you ever had a lustful thought, then you're no better than the person who harmed you, which is absolutely ridiculous. The theory of sin nature was invented by St. Augustine of Hippo. He was a Roman bishop, and he advanced this theory in the 5th century AD, a couple of hundred years after the New Testament was written. The Bible writers didn't even believe that people were born with a sin nature. And his colleagues at the time, other Christian thinkers and leaders, thought it was absolutely ridiculous. But Augustine, he ran in these elite circles, he rubbed elbows with people who were very influential, and he was able to ruthlessly overtake his rivals. And why did Augustine believe that all human beings were born with original sin? Well, because he was looking for justifications or explanations for his own moral failures. We don't always have to do a history deep dive to unravel toxic religion. It's enough to evaluate how the different beliefs we've held or that were forced on us throughout our lives affected us, how it impacted us and the people we care for and love. And if the effect has been toxic, well, that's a pretty good sign that we can let that one go. And we can let it go without any guilt or shame or fear. When it comes to overcoming church abuse, it is so important to go no contact with high control religion. And here's a trigger warning mentions of CSA. But when I was a young adult and I first came forward about having had been as abused as a child, my pastor did rebuke me, and he rebuked me harshly. He had more compassion for my abuser than he had for me. Now, the person who had harmed me was my stepfather, and he dictated to my mother that she couldn't get a divorce. It's not that he had a conversation with her or even was able to absorb what I was trying to explain to him or how all of this was affecting me. He just had this rule that he enforced. And he dictated to me that I had to forgive, that I wasn't allowed to be angry. He felt that I was bitter just because I wanted accountability for what happened to me and I wanted protection for other kids. My mother did stay in her marriage. Now, she is 100% responsible for her own choices, but she was also manipulated by a man of God. In time, my mother started to triangulate our family and friends against me as a means to desperately keep our family secret, especially because she stayed in the marriage. And in those days, I didn't know any better. I didn't have the life experience that I have now. And I would defend myself and I would argue and I would get baited and I would cry and I would scream and I would lose emotional control over myself. And it was all of the evidence that my family needed to back up these false claims that were being made about me. At some point, I realized that I was out of steam. I was out of steam to keep arguing. I realized that I just couldn't do it anymore. And at that point, I just cut everybody off. In those days, I didn't know that there was a term called no contact. I didn't know that this was a thing that people do. I just knew that I needed to do it. And after that, I stopped arguing with people. I stopped seeing myself as this angry, volatile person. I was able to find stability within myself because I wasn't surrounded by people who were destabilizing me. Now, if your spiritual community is healthy, that's wonderful. I'm glad you found that. But if your spiritual community is full of people who are crossing your boundaries, triggering you, you're finding yourself ruminating, those are pretty big red flags. Going no contact isn't easy, but it has been vital to my healing. One thing I've learned is that I can't change anybody else. I can't make anybody see what they don't want to see. The only person I can change is me. And that's what going no contact gave me the opportunity to do, is focus on me and work on healing me. When it comes to overcoming church abuse, it is so important not to replace mental health care with church counseling. The reason why is, especially when it comes to high control religion, it's another way of keeping the matter within the church. Don't get law enforcement involved. Don't let anyone outside of the circles find out what happened. It's another means to silence the victim while protecting the abuser. It appears as though that it's this loving, nurturing, supportive service that the church offers, but when you really look at it, it's not that helpful. Oftentimes in church or pastoral counseling, someone will pray over you and then they just kind of expect you to be healed after a few sessions, and that's not how trauma works. Healing from trauma and abuse is a long term process that there's really no shortcuts for. Victims are then forced and pressured into doing ministry to help other victims before you even get a chance to heal. So then your trauma, what you've been through, it becomes a tool, it becomes another vehicle, and they try to use you and exploit you to silence other victims. If you have spiritual services and practices that are helping you and supporting you, and it's not toxic and nobody's seeking to silence you, I don't see anything wrong with that as long as we understand that these are separate services and the spiritual support that we receive, if you choose to receive it, is not overriding the need for mental health care. With that said, the mental health care industry is not perfect. It also comes with its flaws. I wish I understood that 25 years ago when I first started getting therapy. I used to believe anything a therapist told me, but with time and hindsight, I realized that therapists are just human like the rest of us. Some are pretty great, some aren't so great, and some may be just fine, but not the right fit. Now, when I look for a therapist, I have my, must haves, nice to haves list ready to go. I need one that understands trauma and also understands narcissistic abuse because those are things that I've been through. But also, I look for a therapist who does understand my cultural experience. If you belong to one or more marginalized groups, finding a therapist that understands your experience makes a world of difference. And if you find that your therapist isn't a right fit for you, there's nothing wrong with looking for a different therapist. When it comes to overcoming church abuse, it is so important to befriend being disliked and misunderstood. If not, we can leave one toxic group and then join another. And I know because that's what I did. After so many years of abuse, my self perception was so distorted. My inner critic was so loud. It would tell me that I was worthless, I was unlikable, I was unlovable, that nobody was ever going to care about me. As many of us who go against the grain of our high control religions, I found myself completely alone in the world at a time. So I'd go online and I would read these listicles about how to make friends as an adult, how to build community. And I did anything and everything I could to change myself so that I could be acceptable. But that didn't work because in all the years that I was doing that, I was experiencing a repeated cycle of toxic and short lived friendships. I did meet good people along the way, but due to my trauma, I myself did not have healthy relationship skills. So I didn't know how to make meaningful, healthy connections. At a certain point, I decided to just give up. I thought maybe this whole concept of a chosen family was a myth, or maybe I wasn't good enough for it. I didn't deserve it. So I started to focus more inward. At the time, I thought I had given up, but honestly, it was one of the best things that had ever happened to me. As I started focusing more inward, I had no choice but to confront the voice of my inner critic. When my inner critic would tell me you're worthless, I would stand up to that bully and say, actually, I'm worthy. We can absolutely rewire our thoughts and feelings about ourselves through repetition. And once we do that, the way we see the world and the way we operate in the world really does start to change. During my time of isolation, I started to reconnect with my interests and hobbies. I started to read the books I love. I started engaging in hobbies that I like. There was a time where if I didn't get something right away, my inner critic would be like, see, you're stupid. You're not good at anything. And now I was confronting my inner critic. So I was like, actually, I'm a beginner and I'm going to practice until I get better. As I got reacquainted with myself and I started learning who I am and what I care about and what I love and what makes me happy, what other people think started to matter less and less to me. That's what opened the door for me to find really positive support systems and meet the right people who are a better fit for me. I'm in that process right now. I'm meeting people, doors are opening for me, and my life has really been changing in really positive ways because I started to accept myself. I was so afraid of being unacceptable, but embracing being unacceptable, that's what really changed my life. When it comes to overcoming church abuse, it is so important to carve your own path. Welcome to part 5, the final part of the series. One of the most tragic outcomes of high control religion and church abuse is that victims never quite get to figure out who they really are, what they really want. They live out of alignment with their true selves. We're from a community in which we have to conform. There's rigid, structured rules that everyone has to abide by. When I was a teenager in youth group in the 90s, I was taught that I had to be submissive so that God can send me a husband who would lead me because I was the weaker vessel. So I was very well trained in not thinking for myself or even hating my own individuality, my own uniqueness, my strong personality traits. I believe that one of the best kept secrets to healing and living a fulfilling life is bringing your life into alignment with your true self. So take some time and consider who you really are. What do you prefer? What do you like? What worldview or set of beliefs most appeals to you? How would you spend your free time if not for the fear of hell and damnation? What would you do for a living if money wasn't an issue? How would you wear your hair if you didn't worry about judgment? Who would you want to spend your time with? What are you engaging with that doesn't benefit you? What are you succumbing to out of obligation versus what you would really prefer? Think about the first thing you ever wanted to be when you grew up. What were your preferences even when you were a child? When we live our lives in alignment with our true selves, we find our purpose, we find our calling, we meet genuine people who like us and love us for who we truly are. Different types of opportunities start to open up for us, and we become bold enough to walk through doors that we were afraid of before because these doors lead to a path that is a better fit for who we truly are. So many of us have spent so many years, even decades, praying for a breakthrough, being told that if we just pray hard enough, if we say one more prayer, if we fast one more day, our breakthrough will come. But as long as we're living a life that's out of alignment with who we were meant to be, we don't experience that breakthrough. In the original scriptures, the word for sin was not about a moral blot on our soul. It was not about personal moral failures. It was actually about a life lived out of alignment. But due to language translations, that was lost along the way. To explore more, check out my website. I'm not a life coach. I'm not looking for clients. There's no tiers, there's no upgrades, there's no memberships. It's not a hook to buy some kind of package. It's just free. It's survivingreligiousnarcissism.com. It's a website that I created and I'm working on building up so it could be a location for survivors of church abuse to find free and affordable resources for healing through survivors' perspectives. So please check it out. The link is in the bio. And I look forward to seeing you there.